Hello and welcome back to the Landman Podcast. Today's episode is titled Russia, Russia, Russia. No, just kidding. Russia 2026, the Fortress Economy and the Silk Road Shift. An introduction, the brink of a new bloc. In 2026, the Russian Federation is no longer an economy in transition. It is an economy in isolation and by choice. While the West predicted a total collapse, Moscow has spent the last 2 years engineering a fortress economy. But here is the headline. As of February 2026, Russia has officially overtaken several G7 nations in purchasing power parity, PPP, driven by a total pivot to a war footing and a no-limits partnership with the East that has rewritten the global trade map. The Landman perspective, as a Maryland attorney and a business owner in the precious metals and wellness spaces, I follow the flow of assets. Today, we're dissecting the Russian pivot, the move from a Eurocentric energy giant to a self-sufficient, Eurasia-focused industrial power. Is this a sustainable model of strategic autonomy or a hollowed-out shell game? We're looking at the balance sheets of the Kremlin. Part 2, the macro audit, the cost of sovereignty, the GDP and the growth reality. In 2026, the Russian economy is showing its cracks. After a defense-fueled 4.3% in 2024 growth, the IMF has slashed the 2026 GDP growth forecast to just 0.8%. They are hitting a ceiling where military spending can no longer mask the stagnation in the civilian sector. Let's look at Russia's debt and deficit balance sheet. Total public debt officially now around 34.8 trillion rubles, which is about $498 billion. It's a mere fraction of our 30.5 trillion. Debt to GDP, one of the world's lowest, 17.7% debt to GDP ratio. Boy, do we wish we had that here when we're well over 110, 120. Putin has vowed it won't cross 20%. Finally, that's something I can agree with. But remember, they are paying 14.6% yields on their bonds because of the war and the crisis. That's a massive interest burden. Fiscal deficit, the 2026 target is 3.8 trillion rubles, $49.4 billion. But in January alone, they hit nearly half that annual target. So they're going to go way over in their debt deficit. The revenue gap, the war budget is hitting 40% of total federal spending. They are relying on a weaker ruble to keep the nominal books balanced while trading almost exclusively in yuan and dirhams. They've successfully bypassed the G7 price cap through a shadow fleet of over 600 tankers moving petroleum. There you go, fossil fuels. It's the only thing keeping them afloat. The human capital audit, the workforce strain. Let's talk about the population and the workforce. Russia's total population stands at approximately 143.4 million people, continuing a steady decline. But the real crisis is in the workforce. We have an active labor force of about 76.3 million people, but it is deeply distorted. Total employed, roughly 74.7 million. Unemployment rate is very low at 2.2% because they're somewhat communist. The record low unemployment. Officially, unemployment is at its lowest since 1998. This year, it's a disaster. It's low because of mobilization, emigration. Nearly 1 million people have left since 2022. And the demands of the front lines in the war. They are facing a shortfall of 3.1 million workers by 2030. The extraordinary price, dead from war. We have to talk about the cost of this war. By this month, independent reports suggest Russian military casualties have surpassed 1.2 million people killed and wounded, with confirmed fatalities likely exceeding 325,000. That is an entire generation of productivity being ground down in the mud of Donbass by these Ukrainian powerful people. The engine room, titans of the East, the energy behemoths, Gazprom and Rosneft have completed the pivot. The Power of Siberia 2 pipeline is the new artery. But look at Novatek, their Arctic LNG 2 project. The project is the real 2026 story, proving they can produce supercooled gas without Western tech. They are becoming the junior partner in China's industrial machine, the nuclear giant Rosatom. While the world talks about oil, Russia's real long-term leverage is in nuclear. Rosatom isn't just an energy company, it's a geopolitical tool. They are currently building 39 reactor units abroad, from Turkey to Egypt to China. And we're very concerned that they're going to give this nuclear secrets to Iran. They control nearly 40% of the world's uranium enrichment market. As a Marylander, I look at our own dependence on this. We are essentially funding their fortress through our own light water reactors. Rostec and the military-industrial complex. This is the state conglomerate that now employs millions. They've moved from making tanks to attempting import substitution for everything from microchips to medical devices. It's an industrial rebirth under duress. The banking fortress, Sberbank, has become a tech giant in a closed loop. Without SWIFT, because they've been cut off by Europe and the US, they've built the SPFS system and integrated with China's CIPS. So that's the automated transfer between banks of funds. They are proving that a major economy can survive outside the dollar-dominated garden. So that's a real concern for us. The resource scramble, metals and sovereignty. In my work at Maryland Metal, I track the critical minerals list. Russia remains the king of palladium, nickel, and enriched uranium. In 2026, they are using these as commodity weapons. If you want the green transition in the West, you still ironically need the raw materials from the East. Gold as the ultimate reserve. The Russian central bank has stopped reporting its full gold holdings, but estimates suggest they've moved a massive portion of their wealth into physical bullion. They're buying it from all over the world, China and the mines. And in Africa, they are returning to a hard asset philosophy that bypasses the risk of Western asset seizures, because we have already seized billions from them in Brussels. It's a strategy of financial reforestation, planting deep roots in gold to weather the sanctions storm. Part 6, digital iron curtain, AI, and tech autonomy. The sovereign internet. By 2026, RUNET, it's called, is a reality. Russia has successfully filtered Western platforms and replaced them with domestic clones like VK and Yandex. They are leveraging AI not for consumer convenience, but for surveillance and automated battlefield management. The chip gap. They are still struggling with high-end semiconductors. While they can design chips, they can't fab them at 3 nanometers or 5 nm. Their solution, struggling via gray markets and a massive push for 28 nanometer sufficiency. Good enough for a missile, if not for a smartphone. The conclusion, the Maryland takeaway. A grand summary, Russia 2026 is a study in decoupling. They have sacrificed long-term modernization for short-term resilience. They have a debt to GDP ratio that looks clean on paper, but a workforce that is shrinking and a fiscal deficit that is widening as oil revenues drop. They are betting everything on a no-limits partnership with China that may eventually turn them into a resource colony for Beijing. And of course, this all has to do with their nonsensical war against Ukraine, which makes no sense for what. And by the way, that whole war really goes back to the 1930s, the Holodomor, which was a forced starvation. They killed 7 million Ukrainians in there, and they genocide, which was how they got to clear those eastern areas of Ukraine and put the Russians in to start with. The final verdict, the fortress economy is real, but it's a fortress made of old bricks and new blood. They have managed to survive the initial shock of sanctions, but they are mortgaging their entire future demographically, technologically, and financially to sustain a war that has no clear exit ramp. The Landman take. What do we learn back here in Clarksburg, Maryland? That numbers can be deceptive. A 2.2% unemployment rate sounds like success until you realize it's driven by the absence of workers and the loss of over 325,000 lives. It's a reminder that true strategic autonomy requires more than just energy and gold. It requires a thriving free society that people want to stay in. At Landman Law and Maryland Medicinals, we focus on sustainable growth that builds community rather than consuming it. I'm Moshe Landman. Keep your assets hard, your mind sharp, and your community strong. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.